You're Jimmy, right? This is your house?
Sure is.
I'm Winston Wolfe. I solve problems.
I got a lovely little map here, which is totally authentic, I promise you. I totally didn't just run down and bought a whiteboard at my local DG, and I totally did not cut my finger trying to open this. This is going to become a very bloody episode in more ways than one.
They have their own names. I actually named them based off of what I wanted the name of and what would sound like a power metal band. I got their names right here so that we can go through them right quick for you. Give me a second.
By all means, James, while you're doing that, if you're wondering why I keep looking up.
Is there a cat up there?
There is a cat up there.
There's always a damn cat.
He's not supposed to be up there. And he has a thing for plastic and paper. And for many, many months,
books are made of those.
Yeah. I thought this top shelf's the one area he could not get to. Well, he found the way this week. And alarmingly, he's currently scratching a copy of Abbey Road, which is up there for some reason. I'm about ready to grab him. So while you're searching, talking, I'm going to be right back.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Lorenda show. Oh my goodness, what a day. What a day on our hands. But yeah, we have 14 different tribes. I was working on them because, oh, look at that lovely cat.
I propose we shift our focus to the Western theater. Oof. You sure you want to do that, Johnny? I do. Prepare to quake in your boots, Billy Yank, and allow me to present the most daring cavalry commander of the war. You know him. You love him. It's Nathan Bedford Forrest. Woo! 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 Woo!
The site is now grandly marked by the Soldiers' National Monument. No? Okay, I'm being told the monument in fact does not mark the site of the speeches. Okay, how about this elegant rostrum? After all, both Roosevelts have given speeches here. All right, so this bust of the president denotes the spot, right? No, you're telling me nobody knows where one of the most famous speeches of the 19th century delivered, on one of the most well-documented battlefields, mind you.
I'm sorry, John Brown. Damn. You're so good. She shat down. You literally the most emotional fucking moment of this entire. You blew it. You blew it. Damn, Shawty. Oh no. It's good.
Yeah. So I had somebody just join our streams like, oh man, this guy loves history. And I'm just about to ruin it all. Welcome to Readout Productions, where one moment I can be talking about history, the next moment I'm talking about waifus.
It's the wonder of nature, baby!
Uncut History. How is everybody doing tonight? Let me know in the chat, or if you're watching the recap, in the comments section below, because this is day number 2 of the 4-day Turkey Day week, month schedule that I've made up, because I thought it'd be a great idea. Because, hey, every year it seems like the corporations are trying to make Christmas come earlier and earlier so Christmas can be 24/7, and they just skip right over Thanksgiving. They skip right over that delicious turkey, and it angers me. So I'm fighting the good fight on recognizing that Thanksgiving is a holiday, and not just a holiday, but a hollow weekend. So we have a week of releases. We started yesterday with a Rumble exclusive live stream. We were discussing the multiple theories abounding around the John F. Kennedy assassination. If you weren't able to tune in, you can go back after this stream's over. I would like for you to stay around to listen to tonight's stream, but afterwards, if you're looking for something extra to listen to, go over to our Rumble page and you can listen to that exclusive stream. Tonight, we are back on the air weekly for Thursdays, ideally going forward. I should be back on the schedule 8 p.m. Thursday, streaming here on YouTube and Rumble with Uncut History. Tomorrow, we will have a new episode of the Heterochromedia podcast coming out. And then Saturday, there will be a new installment of Retracing History. So, fun weekend. How's everybody's Thanksgiving doing? How's everybody? We had a pretty good meal today. We have quiet Thanksgivings here. Thankfully, I don't have, at this stage of my life, I do not have to run far distances to celebrate the holidays. I can celebrate my holidays right here in my house. I enjoy that. So if you're traveling, best of luck to you. But for this special Turkey Day edition of Uncut History, we're going to celebrate Turkey Day like we're Ulysses S. Grant in 1863. And yes, the poorly made meme from Pulp Fiction, and I threw into the funnies to start the stream. That is going to allude to what we're going to be talking about tonight. We are talking about, oh, look at that. Look at that sign. The battles for Chattanooga. After I drink water. Yeah, I took my throat out. What are we, 2 minutes into the stream, not counting the funnies, and my voice is gone. Great. So what are the battles for Chattanooga? Well, let's set the stage a little bit. It is the year of 1863. We are in the midst of the 3rd year of the American Civil War, and the start of 1863 did not go well for the Union on the East Coast. If you watched back in May on Uncut History, we did a live stream about the Battle of Chancellorsville, where Joseph Hooker took charge of the Army of the Potomac and had this big plan that he was going to outmaneuver Robert E. Lee's Army in Northern Virginia and pin him down between Fredericksburg and the Chancellorsville Crossroads. Well, that plan went up in smoke, allowing the Confederates to go on the offensive into Pennsylvania. However, Hooker's replacement, George Meade, was able to stop Lee at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, in the bloodiest battle of the conflict. One of the first major Union victories in the Eastern Theater. However, the Western Theater for the past 2.5 years, it was never going well for the Confederates. The Union were always making pretty good strides in the Western Theater, starting in February of 1862, thanks in large part to General Ulysses S. Grant. First by capturing key fortifications on the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers, then being able to withstand a Confederate counterattack at Shiloh. Grant was then able to advance on to Vicksburg, Mississippi, and after several months of trying to get behind the rear of the Confederate forces and laying siege to them, Grant accepted the surrender of the Confederate garrison of Vicksburg, meaning the Confederacy lost complete control of the Mississippi River. So the Confederacy is now divided in half, with most of the states on the east side of the Mississippi unable to communicate with Texas and their outlying frontier posts in New Mexico and Arizona. The Army of North Virginia has been defeated. Vicksburg has fallen. Things are not looking good for the Confederacy, but oddly enough, Their most criticized commander, General Braxton Bragg, we're going to talk about him in a moment, his forces in the Army of Tennessee are able to defeat the Union Army of the Cumberland at the Battle of Chickamauga, the second bloodiest battle of the conflict. It occurs in northern Georgia, just a few miles south of the city we're talking about today, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Now, General William Rosecrans, who's in charge of the Army of the Cumberland, and he's photographed on the left side here, he had been doing a pretty good job of beating Bragg's butt. And General Braxton Bragg, the Confederate commander of the Army of Tennessee, he is on the right side of this illustration. A little bit about both commanders. Braxton Bragg was put in charge of the Confederate Army of Tennessee in the summer of 1862. He planned an offensive into Kentucky to try to reclaim the state. You're going to sue this dirty Yankee. Hey, I can't help the fact that the Yankees win at the end of this. So Bragg tries to launch an offensive at Kentucky. He tries to put a Confederate government in Kentucky, but a good portion of Kentucky are not very fond of the Confederate Army feeding off their land. The Union Army in Kentucky is able to drive Bragg out at the Battle of Perryville. We have also talked about that on Uncut History, actually just a few weeks ago. Bragg is going to fall back into Tennessee, and then he is going to try to salvage the year by attacking the Army of the Cumberland, commanded by William Rosecrans, or known as Old Rosie. Old Rosie, he could be a bit of a slow-moving general, but when he feels he has all the pieces together, boy, is he vicious on the battlefield. Now, Bragg attacks Rosecrans at Murfreesboro, Tennessee, late December, early January, 62-63. So yes, there was a battle on New Year's Day of 1863. Bragg pummels Rosecrans' forces, but Rosecrans refuses to evacuate from Murfreesboro, compelling Bragg to retreat, which infuriated several of his corps commanders. Those corps commanders under Bragg start writing to their political friends in Richmond, Virginia, requesting for Bragg to be removed. President Jefferson Davis, however, is an admirer of General Bragg. People have said that they were friends. I wouldn't call them friends. Bragg was not comfortable with Davis viewing him as a friend. Bragg had fallen out with Davis before the conflict had occurred over a rearrangement of artillery in the Federal Army. Story for another day. So Bragg wants to keep his distance from Davis. However, these mounting losses are making his subordinates push Davis to kick Bragg out of the seat of power. But Davis just loves this guy to death. He thinks he's the greatest disciplinarian you can have in any army in the country. So Bragg stays. And in the summer of 1863, Rosecrans is going to outmaneuver Bragg without a major battle around Tullahoma, Tennessee, compelling Bragg to evacuate most of central Tennessee and even evacuates the city of Chattanooga, which you can see an illustration of between the two generals. Now, why is Chattanooga so important to the course of the American Civil War? He is a brag. What can you say? He is a brag. He's always bragging. Look at that photograph, Billy. Look at the eyes of Bragg. I have never seen a portrait of the Civil War that reeks of confusion more than the photograph of Bragg. That is a very distraught man right there for more reasons than one. All of his subordinates hate him, want him out of the command position, but Davis keeps him in because Davis has this delusion that he's friends with Bragg when he's really only an admirer of Bragg. There's a lot on poor Bragg's plate. Bragg should not have been in charge of the Army of Tennessee. He did not have the mental fortitude, yet Davis let him in, and it caused a lot of problems. So Bragg was outmaneuvered out of Tennessee without much of a fight throughout 1863, and he had lost Chattanooga, which straddles the Tennessee-Georgia border. Chattanooga really was not much of a name on American maps until about a quarter of a century before the American Civil War. So most of the people that live in this community, there are only about 2,500 people. The actual main footprint of the town is only about 1 square mile at this point. Now, if you go to Chattanooga today, it's a very massive metropolis in southern Tennessee, but at this time period, it was relatively small. Chattanooga grew up because it became a critical rail hub. When rail lines are established across the United States in the 1840s and 1850s, most notably the Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad, which runs up into central Tennessee, the Memphis and Charleston Railroad, which is the Confederates' only link between their western and eastern halves, their only major link, I should say, by rail. And then you have, probably most importantly, the Western and Atlantic Railroad, which runs from Chattanooga through Georgia right into Atlanta. Should the Union get possession of Chattanooga, they now have a direct route into what they call the gateway to the Deep South, into the heart of the Deep South. Also, Chattanooga just has some really interesting geology. Yeah, I know you're thinking, oh, really? We're talking about geology? It's cool. There's a lot of these ridges, the spines of these ridges that are eroded by the Tennessee River at Chattanooga, creating this large valley where the town resides. And these ridges, when they get to Chattanooga, erosion has sheared off several feet of sandstone. So you got these sandstone bluffs overlooking the valley below, which is going to make for some interesting situations later in our talk. So yes, Rosecrans, throughout 1863, outmaneuvered Bragg right out of Tennessee, lost Chattanooga, Bragg did, but Bragg was able to beat Rosecrans back. And how did he do it? Well, he didn't do it alone. If you look down over here, you're going to see underneath Bragg his Free Corps commanders going into the battles for Chattanooga. The one on the left may sound familiar. That's James Longstreet. He's not from the Western Theater. James Longstreet, after the Confederate defeat at Gettysburg, was sent west by rail to reinforce Bragg. Now, Robert E. Lee had actually opposed this maneuver earlier in the year. Davis wanted to divert Longstreet west to reinforce what was going on in Vicksburg, to which Lee said, oh, I can't. The weather won't let me to. Plus, I got this really cool strategy to go into Pennsylvania and do a lot of funnies. It'll be a good time. Well, after Lee's plans were foiled at the Battle of Gettysburg, Davis now had superiority over Lee in terms of military command, so he diverted Longstreet west. So these are Army of Northern Virginia guys coming west, linking up with the Army of Tennessee, and basically Longstreet turning to Bragg saying, this is how you win a battle. And the Army of Tennessee, with assistance from Longstreet, were able to crush the Army of the Cumberland at the Battle of Chickamauga. Again, the second deadliest battle of the American Civil War. And Rosecrans had become quite comfortable with victory at Stones River, Murfreesboro, victory in Tullahoma, a bloodless victory. He had captured Chattanooga without much of a fire and gunpowder. And then he has this massive, brutal defeat. Rosecrans just kind of loses his senses. He just kind of goes, it's all over. So he gets pinned down in Chattanooga. And Bragg is able to put the Confederate troops, the Army of Tennessee, in one of the rare moments of the Civil War, is on the offensive. They put up positions on the ridges south of the town of Chattanooga, I should say. It's not really a city yet. Now, Bragg does not attack. Bragg has sustained 25% casualties as a result of the Battle of Chickamauga, and he thinks Rosecrans has a very formidable position, which he's not entirely wrong. So Bragg stays on the high ground and kind of has Rosecrans laid siege to. And Rosecrans starts wiring Washington, D.C. that he is planning to evacuate Chattanooga, that he's going to give up what he had just won earlier in the year. When D.C. heard this, that was the end of Rosecrans in command. Guess who they're going to send to replace Rosecrans? Poor Hooker. No wonder he was a Yankee. I've heard it has a cool aquarium. Boy, I want to go to Chattanooga. But as you know, there's so many places I want to go. But Chattanooga especially, there seems to be a lot to do there. Though I wonder how touristy it is, you know. There's not a lot of battlefield, I know. We'll talk about that at the end of the stream. So, Rosecrans is out in charge of the Army of the Cumberland, and in comes Ulysses S. Grant. Yes, Grant got it done at Vicksburg, and now he's being moved over to Middle Tennessee to get it done to solve this matter at Chattanooga. Hence the Winston Wolfe meme from in the funnies. Now, Ulysses S. Grant is not going to be alone. Before this campaign in Chattanooga is over, Ulysses S. Grant will be in charge of the Military Division of Mississippi. This is a new division created by the United States government, and essentially it allows Grant to have power over multiple armies in the Western Theater. And you're going to see his free subordinates underneath them. From left to right, his good friend, William T. Sherman, who's in charge of the Army of the Tennessee, not to confuse with Army of Tennessee, commanded by Bragg. If you want to get really confusing, at the Battle of Bull Run, the Union Army was called the Army of Virginia, and the Confederate Army was called the Army of Potomac. It can get really confusing. They didn't really settle out their names until midway through the conflict. So William T. Sherman's in charge of 2 corps of the Army of Tennessee, which, by the way, this was the army that Grant commanded at Shiloh just a year prior. He's also going to be reinforced by Joseph Hooker on the far right. Hey, look, Hooker, he's back in the picture. Hey, look. So we know what happened to Hooker at Chancellorsville. He was a really good organizer, but when he came to actually executing his plans, he couldn't do it on an army commander level. But now he's back in this weird quasi position. He's not really in charge of an army. He just has a command, which is the ruins of the 11th and 12th Corps. The 11th and 12th Corps participated and got mauled at Gettysburg. So they were very small numbers. About 10,000 were lumped together, thrown to Hooker, and then Hooker was sent out west with them. And then, of course, we have the remains of the Army of the Cumberland, commanded by George H. Thomas. Thomas is going to be the one who replaces Rosecrans in charge of the Army of the Cumberland, but keep in mind, Grant is in overall command of Union troops at Chattanooga. They got a lot of troops, 72,000 Union soldiers in Chattanooga before the campaign is over. Compared to Bragg, who has 48,000 men at arms in the Army of Tennessee, and he has corps commanders. So this is all one army. Longstreet, William G. Hardy, who, by the way, or J. Hardy, William J. Hardy, by the way, he literally wrote the book on the United States Army. He wrote the manual of arms that was used up to the American Civil War, Hardy's Manual, which the Confederacy kept using. Guess what the Union did? They got a guy named Silas Casey to basically republish Hardy's manual, but call it Casey's manual instead of Hardy's. There are a few slight changes with how you hold the musket, but it's the same basic manual book, but the Union were so spiteful. They wouldn't keep Hardy's name on it. That's very spiteful. Although you might think this gives Hardy an edge that he wrote the book on the U.S. military, well, he kind of copied the French manual of military arms in the 1840s. He just kind of plagiarized. So, yeah, I don't know how much he really knows. And then we have John C. Breckinridge. And John C. Breckinridge, I think he has an interesting dynamic to the Army of Tennessee, a political dynamic. John C. Breckinridge was the vice president of the United States before the Civil War. He was President Buchanan's vice president and ran on the Southern Democratic ticket for the presidency during the 1860 election. So this was one of Lincoln's 3 different opponents. This is the one that was most staunchly in favor of maintaining slavery and other elements in the southern states that the Republican Party were going to remove, or at least the southern states thought they were going to remove, which is why secession ensued. So Breckinridge's party were essentially the party of secession a few months after the presidential election. And here he is commanding a portion of the Army of Tennessee at Chattanooga, but also, again, political appointed. So, yeah, we got an interesting dichotomy here. We got Bragg, who nobody likes. We got Longstreet, who is Longstreet is seen as the most competent leader in this army because he's coming from the Army of Northern Virginia, which are actually victorious in the East. But Longstreet vehemently is beginning to dislike Bragg. Hardy, he brags about, brags. He is bragging about being the man who wrote the book of the U.S. Army, even though he copied it from France. And then we have John C. Breckinridge, who was one of the presidential candidates that the election that led to the country's implosion. Boy, is the Army of Tennessee a mess. All right. So here we are. Now, first order of business. In late October of 1863, Grant is going to arrive. Now, Chattanooga was not entirely cut off. So, yes, Bragg is laying siege to it, but Thomas was able to get the Army of Cumberland supplies still. Coming down I think it's called, Walden Ridge? Yeah, it's Walden Ridge, north of Chattanooga. There is a very narrow, rickety wagon trail that zigzags down the mountains. It was really difficult to get supplies down that way. So supplies were coming in, but very, very piecemeal. And Bragg was launching Confederate cavalry raids on the back of Walden Ridge, making life very difficult for the Union supply system. When Grant arrives, he decides, all right, we're going to get you a proper feeding tube into the city. And he's going to open what's called the Cracker Line. Now, in order to do this, he has to get a pontoon bridge established across the Tennessee River. Well, there's a problem doing that. If you try moving anywhere across the river in broad daylight, the cannons on the high ground overlooking the bends in the rivers are going to blow your pontoons out of the water. So you have to do this under nighttime. Well, thankfully, the main engineer of the Army of the Cumberland, which was William Baldy Smith, he had come up with an idea, a clever idea, which was he would get picked men, put them in pontoon boats, and then they would float down the Tennessee River about a mile from Chattanooga around Moccasin Bend, a tight bend just southwest of Chattanooga, and then would offload on the west side of the river at Brown's Ferry. They would establish a beachhead, and then they can use the pontoons that they use the current to get to the ferry. They'll go across to the east side of the river and start bringing over another brigade of Union soldiers, and then establish their bridge across. They're going to do this under the cover of dark. And the reason they're not just going over the Browns Ferry and just going the short way is because they're most likely going to make a ruckus if they start hammering. So what they end up doing is they get these pontoon boats, and on the night of October 27th, they just float with the current as silently as they can. The men were literally standing in their boats. They couldn't even sit, so they could get as many in as possible. Floated right onto Brown's Ferry. The Confederate pickets did start firing at them, but there were too many Union soldiers to deal with. The 15th Alabama, who is a regiment and also were from the Eastern Feeder. By the way, the 15th Alabama, they're the guys that fight on Little Round Top against the 20th Maine. So if you ever watched the movie Gettysburg, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain's up there on the left flank. He's holding back Confederates. It's the 15th Alabama is attacking Chamberlain in the movie and in real life. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Or getting behind myself. I guess Gettysburg occurred before Chattanooga. Ooh, Clash of Kings. I have to consider that. I'm thinking in the winter some more time. I've been wanting to do like fantasy battle breakdowns, but try to do them straight lace, like I did the Mystery Flesh Pit. Just no humor. Just go right in like, this is serious, guys. This is really happening. No explanation needed. So, yes, this plan to open a supply line at Brown's Ferry succeeded. There were a few casualties, but nothing major. The Union established a pontoon bridge across the Tennessee River. The Cracker Line is open. Bragg is pissed. He is like, how the heck did this happen without me seeing it? And he starts ordering Longstreet. Hey, you better go. Because Longstreet has the left side of the Confederate line, Chattanooga. So it was his responsibility to guard this portion to prevent the Union from getting across the Tennessee River and open a supply line. So Bragg starts pushing Longstreet. Hey, you go over there, you drive them back across the river. Longstreet does not want to, and there is much debate over why he's very slow to respond to this. In any case, Joseph Hooker is going to advance. He's actually advancing from the southwest. So he's coming from the southwest. He's coming up through some mountain gaps, and then he is going to arrive at Brown's Ferry. So actually, I think Hooker, he was down in Alabama before he came up. So he's coming from Alabama up to Chattanooga to reinforce Grant at Chattanooga. So Brown's Ferry is secured. Hooker marches up, but he's decided to camp the night of October 28th on the west side of the Tennessee River. He's not going to advance over into Chattanooga until the following day. Well, that does provide Longstreet the chance to make up for lost time. And on the night of October 28th, elements of Longstreet's Confederate Corps are going to move down from Lookout Mountain, this big bluff, almost, it's like, I think it's like 800 feet overlooking the Tennessee River. They come down from Lookout Mountain and they isolate I think they isolate the division of John Geary. John Geary, by the way, is a homeboy for me. He was actually born and raised not too far from where I'm currently filming. He would also become the governor of Pennsylvania after the American Civil War. So John W. Geary's division is what Longstreet chooses to isolate and try to destroy. So this is a night attack. Unfortunately for Longstreet's Corps, coming down Lookout Mountain is next to impossible in the darkness. I mean, it's all these boulders and jagged edges, trees. There's a stream at the bottom. Not good terrain to maneuver over in darkness. So Longstreet comes down. He ain't gonna be able to get his whole corps to attack Geary. Only McLaws's division is actually going to engage Geary. Hooker is going to start hearing gunfire near the Wauhatchie Railroad Station. He's going to organize the 11th Corps to go and relieve Geary, but as they advance to the south, they too get pinned down by Confederates coming off of Lookout Mountain and have to engage them. Although McLaws's division of the Confederate Army is able to pin down Union troops, Hooker is able to use his numbers against McLaws's and drives them back up Lookout Mountain. And the Cracker Line, as it became to be known, is now permanently open. Supplies can now come in from the southwest and from the west. Remember, the Union have the Mississippi River under their control now. They have most of Mississippi in their possession. So they can have people, troops, and supplies coming from the west, coming up the rail lines through Wauhatchie, across the Tennessee River, and right into Chattanooga. So no more worry about starvation for Grant and his Union forces. And this is a photograph of what Brown's Ferry looks like today. This is looking from the east side, looking west. You'll notice there's a bit of a gap there between the two hills. The hills to the left, that would be the start of Lookout Mountain. And the side to the left, that would be Raccoon Mountain. Now, in the intermediate time, Grant was very excited to get on the roll. He wants to go on the offensive and drive Bragg out of Chattanooga once and for all. He is going to have some organization problems, mostly because of the weather. Weather in October, early in November of 1863 in Chattanooga, horrible, pouring rain almost every day. The Tennessee River is becoming increasingly, I just want to say, it's becoming increasingly chaotic. Every day the water level is fluctuating high and low. It's too high, that's going to start knocking out pontoon bridges. So it's a little difficult for Grant to maneuver troops to make an attack on Bragg's positions. In the meantime, however, insanity is ensuing on Bragg's part because of Longstreet's shortcomings during the Brown's Ferry landing and the Battle of Wauhatchie. Bragg wants rid of Longstreet. Longstreet also has been suggesting about crossing the Tennessee River and trying to get behind Grant's rear. But Bragg takes this several steps. Instead of just getting behind Grant's rear, Bragg suggests moving Longstreet's entire corps and sending them almost like 100 miles to the northeast to go and attack Knoxville. Okay, I don't think it's like 100 miles. I think it's more like, 70 miles, 60, 70. But you get my point. Bragg decides at this crucial hour, as the Union's getting resupplied, to divert a third of his army and send them north, where he has no control over them because he wants to get rid of Longstreet and Longstreet's disputes with him in command. Longstreet is furious, saying, look, I wanted to go and get behind Grant, but this is too far. What happens if Grant attacks you? You're going to be low on numbers. That 48,000, by the way, that I showed you, that was including Longstreet's force. So when Longstreet's gone, you're only looking about a little more than 30,000 Confederates to hold the high ground over Chattanooga. And we saw the 72,000 number Grant's going to have. Nevertheless, Davis supported Bragg's intuition, and Longstreet is going to splinter off from the Army of Tennessee, move to the northeast, and he is going to try to capture Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, this does have initially some I guess you want to say, at least for the Confederates, some positive effects, because this is getting Grant nervous. Grant's worried that if Longstreet's able to overwhelm the Union garrison in Knoxville, that then he's going to come down behind his rear. So Grant is now wanting to get an offensive, a breakout out of Chattanooga done as soon as possible. But again, the weather's not cooperating. Now, ultimately, Grant is going to decide he wants to attack Bragg's line on the northern edge of Missionary Ridge. And Missionary Ridge, I'm going to go back a few slides, is this big ridge you see to the right of that map. That is Missionary Ridge. That is Bragg's main defensive positions. Bragg also has defensive positions to the southwest on Lookout Mountain. So that is his focus. Oh, wow, I had a perfect photograph for it. This is a period illustration from Lookout Mountain. So we are looking toward the north from that high peak. To your very far left, you're going to see Moccasin Bend. You're going to see Brown's Ferry, where the landing was done in October to open supply lines. You're then going to see the town of Chattanooga right in the middle. And then you're going to see off to the right, Missionary Ridge. Now, Grant does not want to attack it frontally because that is just sheer suicide. He wants to attack it from the north, try to get around Bragg's right flank. But he's starting to get worried with these news that Longstreet has moved to the north, moved to Knoxville. So on November 23rd, 1863, to try to get his bearings, to try to get a better view of what Bragg's strength is, does he have Longstreet? Is Longstreet gone? Has Bragg completely evacuated? What's going on? Grant is going to tell Thomas, remember he's now in charge of the Army of the Cumberland, to do a reconnaissance in force. And what that entails is, I can't believe, so I picture it. You're with the 24th or 28th Alabama, and you are on a skirmish line. So you're not shoulder to shoulder. You're about 10 feet away. There's a soldier to your right, 10 feet away. There's a shoulder to your left. And for about 2 months now, every morning you go up on top of this barren hillside. There are trees on it. There's an orchard nearby it, but it's pretty open. This hillside between Missionary Ridge and the town of Chattanooga. You're in no man's land. You're in no man's land between the two armies. For 2 months, though, you've gone out there, Union never fired at you. In fact, you kind of get your own private parade. You get to watch the Union troops several hundred yards to your north parading in front of the Union defenses. And this went on for 2 months, so everybody got kind of complacent. And then one morning, you wake up to find that there are four Union brigades right in front of you. There's several brigades just lined up shoulder to shoulder and all advancing at the double quick towards you. Yeah, you're going to do something in your pants. So this is the Battle of Orchard Knob. Thomas moves several divisions. I originally said 4 brigades. It was 2 elements of 2 divisions of the Army of the Cumberland are going to roll out of Chattanooga. They're going to move very quickly, and they're going to, like a wave, crash right over Orchard Knob, taking hundreds prisoner of the 24th and 28th Alabama. This battle, there's like 3 volleys fired during it. It's over minutes. Thomas, 2 Union divisions for a reconnaissance may be deemed a little excessive. But it got the job done. And they now have the Union now have possession of this high ground and now have a very good view of the Confederate defenses on Missionary Ridge, which confirms to Grant that Bragg, that's a pretty daunting position to take, at least visually. It does appear that Longstreet has evacuated. It looks like that the Confederate forces on Lookout Mountain are weak. Looks like the bulk of Bragg's forces are on Missionary Ridge. This is going to allow, on the night of November 23rd, hey, look, 160 years ago, today. I wonder why I'm doing this for the stream today. Bloated River. Yeah, that was the little word I was looking for. My brain's funny. So, we mentioned earlier that Grant was wanting to attack the northern end of Missionary Ridge. And by this point, William T. Sherman is on the scene with his Army of Tennessee to get the job done. Grant favors Sherman because he has over a year, He has many years of experience with Sherman, but during the Civil War, he has been in regular contact with him for almost 2 years now. He's a very reliable commander for Grant. But again, the bloated rivers are making life very difficult for Sherman to get in position to attack the Confederate right flank on northern Missionary Ridge. In the intermediate time, while Sherman is taking his good old time getting in position to attack, Grant commands Joseph Hooker to make a diversion on the Confederate left on Lookout Mountain. Well, Joseph Hooker, he wants to avenge the loss of Chancellorsville. He wants to wipe the smudge from his name. And by reconnaissance, he is going to make a full-scale attack on Lookout Mountain. Now, we talked a little earlier about the difficulty of maneuvering troops on Lookout Mountain. When McLaws' Confederate division came down Lookout Mountain in late October to attack Hooker's troops, they had to go over rocks, they had to go over trees, they had to go over uneven topography, they had to go over a creek. It's just nasty business. You really can't maneuver artillery over this mountain. You really can't maneuver wagons. You can only go in with infantry. Only infantry can clear it out. This is close quarters action. Well, you sure it can never be clean, Billy? You sure it can never be clean? Let's see. Let's find out. So, Hooker's going to decide his plan is he's going to move the 11th and 12th Corps, and he's going to kind of move them on different tiers. So how this mountain is laid out, you have the sheer sandstone that you're seeing photographed there, the several hundred feet of sheared sandstone. We're not going to go out there and fight. That's just stupid. That's just stupid. Also to remind you that the Confederates actually have cannons on top of, not far from the top of the sheer sandstone. So we're not going up there. We're not getting in front of those guns. But much of the mountain below has these various, I can only describe as natural steps, just how the erosion is. So his advance is kind of tiered. You're going to see Woods's division there. They're going to be on the lowest tier, clinging close to the Tennessee River. They're going to have Candy's. For a moment, I'm like, oh, candy, I can go for some candy. Candy's division is going to move a little bit higher up. Then you're going to have Gross's division. You're going to have Ireland. Ireland's division's moving through. Whitaker's division. Also, by the way, Whitaker, he's bringing up the rear of Hooker's attack. He had a bottle of whiskey with him during the whole engagement on November 24th. He was drinking the whole way through this thing, be it because he was an alcoholic or because he's like, this is so insane. This is so insane. But in the early morning hours of November 24th, under the cover of fog, as there was a rainstorm the night before. So fog is concealing Lookout Mountain. You really can't see far away. The clouds are hanging low, obscuring the peak of it. Hooker moves his command around the northern side of Lookout Mountain, and boy, are the Confederate pickets up there stupefied by what they're seeing. It isn't until that Hooker's force is right on top of them that the Confederates start returning fire, and the first defense of the Confederates on the sides of Lookout Mountain quickly fall back to one of the few openings on the mountain, which is near the Craven House. Interesting detail about the Craven House, it's owned by a local blast furnace owner. And actually, the house will be destroyed a few months after the battle when the Union occupy it. They strip it of everything for firewood, essentially. Craven would still own the property after the war, and he would rebuild his house. And the house that he rebuilt there in 1866 is still there today as part of the Park Service. One of the few spots in Chattanooga the National Park Service preserves relating to the battle, on like a historical scale. So Hooker moves through, meets the 2nd Confederate line at the Craven House. There is a brief but pretty tense struggle trying to push the Confederates off their final foothold on Lookout Mountain. And meanwhile, this is all occurring. Grant, Thomas, or Sherman, they're there in Chattanooga, and they're just hearing this roar of gunfire. And, you can't see it because of the fog and the clouds. They're just looking up in the air, just seeing the occasional flashes of muskets. And there have been some fantastical illustrations conducted of this battle. This battle definitely is one of the most fantastical battles, just because of its setting on this very uneven terrain. They're fighting in on cliffs. It looks like they're fighting in steep boulders. Like, it looks like something out of a Tolkien book. So it has been dubbed the Battle Above the Clouds. And there is this lovely illustration was done in the early 1870s, so not long after the Civil War. Not very accurate depicting the Battle of Lookout Mountain, because, well, the battle should be actually occurring on the mountain, not all these troops down here below. But it gives you the idea of Grant never just watching from Chattanooga, kind of just listening to gunfire and Grant and going, well. By noon on November 24th, 1863, Hooker's command had driven Confederate forces off of Lookout Mountain. Bragg is going to be forced to pull his left flank off the base of Lookout Mountain, out of the valley below, and put it on the south flank of Missionary Ridge as a result. So Hooker went in. Grant told him just to do a reconnaissance, just to divert, so Sherman can make his major attack on Missionary Ridge. Well, Sherman never got able to attack on November 24th. By the time he got in position, it was well after evening. It was dark, and he wasn't going to go through the mess that Hooker just had it dealt with on Lookout Mountain. But Hooker's ignorance of orders actually got a pretty key victory for Grant. And in some ways, I would say, redeemed just a little bit of his credibility. I guess we could say it didn't redeem all of it. And there's events after the Chattanooga campaign that can resoil Hooker's legacy. But for this one moment, it's like, okay, you're still pretty good on a corps commanding level. Thus, the stage is set for Bragg's last stand, the official battle of Missionary Ridge. So after weeks of delays and postponements and cancellations and rescheduling, Grant decides the following day after the Battle of Lookout Mountain, he is going to make his massive assault on Missionary Ridge. The plan for the morning of November 25th is that Sherman is going to attack the Confederate right flank. Like I mentioned earlier, Grant trusts Sherman the most out of his three key commanders. He wants Sherman to smash the Confederate right flank on the northern edge of the ridge. He is going to have Thomas demonstrate against the Confederate center. So Thomas leading the Army of the Cumberland at the Confederate center. And then we're going to have Hooker. Well, Hooker's instructions are a little bit confusing to this very day, what originally he was supposed to do. I've heard some say that he was meant to go and envelop the left flank. I've heard some say, no, he's meant to go out to the Rossville Gap and really just hold the gap in case the Confederates start retreating, so it can kind of be like a net to wrap them up. And then some say Hooker had no idea what he's doing, and Hooker did what Hooker does. He went into business for himself. Whatever the case, we'll get to his actions in a little bit. So that is the plan. A hard hook to the right, a block in the center, and spoopiness on the left. So at daybreak, Sherman and the Army of Tennessee launched their attack and discover the maps they've been reading are completely wrong, and that they are not attacking the northern edge of Missionary Ridge. Oh no, they're attacking a separate hilltop that's completely separate from the main ridge. So even if they take this hill, known as Tunnel Hill, they still have to go down a valley and then have to assault the Confederate right flank uphill. Not good for Sherman. So all morning he is being held at bay on Tunnel Hill. Patrick Cleburne's Confederate division make a stout defense, arguably one of the few shining moments of the Army of Tennessee during this entire campaign. Cleburne is going to hold his ground for the entire day. Meanwhile, and the Confederate center, by midday, Grant allows Thomas to make his diversion. He moves forward. Now, this is where I should say the four divisions are moving forward, and they're moving over a valley. And this, the photograph to the left is a period photograph taken looking at Missionary Ridge as a few months after the battle, and you can see it's quite barren. So here's there's like 30,000 Union soldiers commanded by Thomas making their way out as a diversion. They're all out there trying to be basically ducks for the draw Confederate fire to deviate attention from Sherman. They get to the base of Missionary Ridge, and what happens next, some declare is a miracle. Other people declare was madness. Some people say was one of the most irrational decisions ever made during the Civil War, and some people consider was probably one of the best on-the-spot decision-making during the Civil War. The Army of the Cumberland, Thomas's command, get to the foot of Missionary Ridge. They drive the Confederates out of the first of 3 trenches. Bragg had entrenched his men at the bottom of Missionary Ridge, the middle, and at the very top. He also has the artillery pieces at the very top. But what the Unions start noticing is, well, if we stay here, we're going to be in direct line of the second line of trenches to be fired upon. No good. If we fall back, Grant is going to be upset with us because we're supposed to demonstrate. We're supposed to stay here. We weren't told what to do next. And also, we don't want to get shot in the back. We could also just keep moving forward because if we're going to get shot, let's get shot while we're trying to capture some terrain. And some commanders, or even just some individual soldiers, nobody knows if a command was ever given. But parts of the Army of the Cumberland just start advancing up Missionary Ridge. They're not in like one neat line, but all of these like regiments and these ad hoc battalions start forming in these V formations and start falling their flags up Missionary Ridge because the idea is we get to the top, we're gonna get shot at. Whatever we do today, at the very least, let's die trying to gain some ground. When Grant starts noticing the Army of the Cumberland en masse just starting to move up the hillside, he turns to Thomas, completely cross, and asks, "Did you order them to attack?" Thomas like, "That ain't me." Turns over to one of Thomas's corps commanders, Granger, asks, "Was that your idea?" "Nope, not mine, I promise. That's not my idea." And basically Grant's like, "Well, if they fail today, somebody is going to be reprimanded." Nevertheless, the Army of the Cumberland, whoever gave the command, we don't know. Without any command, the soldiers of the Army of the Cumberland are advancing up Missionary Ridge under gunfire and artillery fire. Here's the science behind why they are able to do this. Because in any other case, this should be a suicidal frontal assault. We just established earlier in his program that Grant thought attacking Missionary Ridge from the front was suicidal. Well, Braxton Bragg was an artillerist before the American Civil War. His specialty is artillery, but it appears that his artillery senses have gone dull. He has put his soldiers on top of the hill with all their cannon. Military 101 tells you do not want to put your troops and your cannon on the very top because you'll be silhouetted by the sun. You'll be easy targets for the attacking force. Also, when you have your artillery on the tippy top of a hill and you're shooting down at people assaulting you, you cannot depress the barrels of your cannons low enough. So they have these barrels depressed as low as their carriages will allow. They're trying to fire down at the Army of the Cumberland. Most of these balls are just going over their heads. So there's this narrow field of fire, essentially, where the Army of the Cumberland is standing on the hillside where they're relatively safe as they make their way up. When they hit the top of the ridge, they're able to smash right into the front of the Army of Tennessee. There is hand-to-hand fighting. This is probably where the Union Army suffers its highest casualties during the entire campaign, is when they hit the crest. But very quickly, chaos erupts all along Missionary Ridge. Some Confederate generals are falling back. Other Confederate generals are trying to advance forward, leading their regimental commanders to get captured or wounded or worse, killed. And then there's our good friend, Joseph Hooker. Joseph Hooker, earlier in this battle, had been contacted by Thomas, and Thomas said, "Okay, I know Grant told you to do one thing, but I need you to do me a huge favor, and can you secure my right flank when I make my diversion?" Hooker says, fair enough. Now I have proper orders. So Hooker starts swinging to the north. Good thing that he does, because in late afternoon, once he gets over the swollen creeks, he's going to find this chaotic scene as his command rises up on Missionary Ridge. They walk in, and they kind of go, there's Confederates just running left and right all in front of them as Thomas's men come to the top of the ridge. So Hooker plays a little bit of crowd control, firing, putting how do I want to word this, smashing into the Confederate left flank, compelling Breckinridge's half of the Confederate army to fall off of Missionary Ridge. So the center and left of the Confederate Army in Tennessee have completely imploded. It is sheer chaos. Bragg himself being swept up by the rout. Cleburne's division and elements of Hardee's corps are going to try to form a defense on the Confederate right flank, and to their credit, they do hold until about 6 o'clock in the evening when they're given instructions to fall back, that you're about to be surrounded by the Union. And by the night of November 25th, 1863, Bragg had lost all of the high ground surrounding Chattanooga and was in retreat back into Georgia. Chattanooga was now firmly in the hands of Grant and his Union forces. It's creative liberty. The battles for Chattanooga, ultimately, 5,824 Union soldiers were made casualties during the Free Day action. These numbers, by the way, do not include the actions of Brown's Ferry and Walhatchee. Then the Confederate casualties resulted in about 8,000 losses. In total, as we stated, the Union have firmly secured Chattanooga. The crisis that started with Rosecrans' defeat at Chickamauga has been thwarted. Really, the last chance, I guess you could say, the Confederate had at turning the tide in the Western Theater was gone, although there would be a very ballsy Confederate commander that would try to go on an offensive in November of 1864. And I did a video about it last year that was called Hood's Tennessee Christmas of 64. And boy, did that man not have a chance. But you could watch that video to learn all the more about that, what happened the year after Chattanooga. But this was really, in my opinion, the last gasp that the Confederacy had in the Western Theater. Going forward, Grant is going to be given overall command of all Union forces in the American Civil War. He is going to move to make his headquarters with the Army of the Potomac so he can fight Robert E. Lee directly. And we all know that'll eventually lead to Robert E. Lee surrendering to Grant in April of 1865. In Grant's absence, Sherman becomes the de facto ruler of the Western Theater for the Union. He'll retain command of the Army of Tennessee, but he'll also become the commander of the Mississippi Military Division. Sherman is going to make his move on Atlanta. Now, during that movement in February of 1864, so just about 3 months after the loss of Chattanooga, Bragg will be promoted. Yeah, I kid you not. General Bragg was promoted for his actions at Chattanooga. He was made the chief of staff, the main military advisor for President Jefferson Davis. And I put it in quotes by promoted. The real reason they did this was it made Davis happy. He's like, all right, I get to be with my hero. I get to be with my hero. And Bragg's like, get away. Please don't hug me. And this also makes the Army of Tennessee happy because they have now gotten rid of Bragg, which they have asked for almost a year and a half up to this point. Although, no, I should say, I've been doing a lot of research on Bragg's leadership. I just actually, for my final paper, my Civil War course, it was actually an analysis of different sources on Bragg. And I think Bragg is given a bit of a bad rap. I don't think he was a good commander. I don't think he was fit for this job. But I believe a lot of the situation that Bragg fell into was a result of politicking by his subordinates, which just, it's like, come on, guys. You know, you're basically, you're writing all these dirty letters to Confederate Congress so the newspapers will smear Bragg and basically drive him into insanity out of command. That's not a very good idea that you're driving your commander into insanity, because guess what that means for you and your soldiers. Doesn't mean very good things. So I think that a lot of Bragg's abuse was unwarranted, and I think actually was detrimental to the whole army, not just Bragg himself, but the whole army. So it was just this negative cycle that went on for essentially a year and a half in the Western Theater. But in any case, the Army of Tennessee, they were no longer under Bragg's authority. Bragg was now the military advisor to Jefferson Davis. And as you can tell by current American history, that ended very well, didn't it? And the thing, Bragg, they named the fort after him. Fort Bragg. They named this after him. What a commander to name a military installation out of in the American military. What do you think? It's called for smart. So yes, battles for Chattanooga cemented Grant's legacy. moved him to the Eastern Theater to take overall command of the entire Union military forces. He will ultimately be able to defeat Robert E. Lee in the Army of Northern Virginia in April of 1865. Sherman will fill the void left behind by Grant. Sherman will advance upon Atlanta. He will drive the Army of Tennessee out of Atlanta, then go on his infamous march to the sea, and thereby now not only do we have the Confederacy cut in half, it's now cut in thirds by the end of 1864. And all because the gateway to the Deep South was now in Union hands, and the gateway was Chattanooga. So, that's the battles for Chattanooga. This is, I think, one of the most entertaining campaigns to read about. I don't want Death and Destruction to be entertaining, but there's a lot of interesting elements that come into play with the battles for Chattanooga. It's this big crossover of different commanders from different theaters. You wouldn't normally see these names on the same teams, but this is the one battle you'll do. I mean, we got Grant, who at this point in the war was primarily involved with the Western Theater. He was the biggest leader in the Western Theater. And under his command, he has the Army of Tennessee, which was where he started in the war, the Army of Tennessee. He got the Army of the Cumberland, which he does not have a really good relation with George Henry Thomas. He is very critical of this movement to take Missionary Ridge, even though successful, how reckless it was. So that did cause a fissure between Thomas and Grant for the remainder of the conflict, although they were still on the same team. And then you got Hooker, who's from the Army of the Potomac. You got these two battered corps from Gettysburg here getting whipped yet again. So you have these just interesting components. You have 3 different Union armies all under one umbrella. Not something you're going to typically see during the war, especially on this massive scale. And then look at Bragg's force. You're going to have the former vice president of the country as one of his core commanders. You're going to have the man that wrote the military manual in his command. And then you're going to have one of the most famous commanders from the Eastern Theater with you. Longstreet, the Army of North Virginia, is represented in a Western Theater battle. It's so peculiar. Granted, Longstreet was gone before the main course occurred. And also just Chattanooga, like the terrain they had to fight over. It's just I just want to say, an interesting arena for fighting. It's an interesting arena for fighting. You got those steep ridges. You got like Lookout Mountain with that sheer cliff. And like I said, it's almost like a Lord of the Rings-esque like battlefield. You're fighting in these trees around these very steep boulders. You're fighting almost vertical. And then you got the main assault on Missionary Ridge, which is just something you think Hollywood would make up, but it really happened. Who gave the order to assault? We'll never know. And it probably wasn't no order. It probably was a bunch of soldiers doing that. Survival kicked in and was fight or flight, and they decided to fight forward. So yeah, the battles for Chattanooga are very fun to study. There's a interest in the study. It's a big turning point for the American Civil War. Going forward after this, what's going to happen in the Western Theater, at least, is inevitable. Confederate defeat, it's inevitable after this. So yeah, those are the battles for Chattanooga. What do you guys think? See, I even got dressed up for this occasion. All right. Well, we're not quite done yet. I got a little something, little treat, because it is Turkey Day. I must celebrate the day of the turkey, the big turkey. So give me one moment. I got to set it up. There is a certain thing that must be played on Thanksgiving. There's not too much programming involving Turkey Day, especially nowadays. I mean, you have the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special. Go watch that. Home for the Holidays is really fun with, what was it? Is it Holly Hunter? I think it's Holly Hunter stars or directs it, or she does both in it. There you go. Home for the Holidays is a very fun movie to watch. Robert Downey Jr. is just a hilarious character, and it's about a very dysfunctional family during Thanksgiving and just everything that could go wrong. And Robert Downey Jr.'s character, his whole purpose for living is to make his sister's life a living nightmare. One of his sisters being very uppity and snobbish, but that's not what we're talking about. We must play the clip. Now, I'm probably going to get a copyright strike for this, so no ad revenue coming out of this. Then again, I don't think I've had any ad revenue come out of my videos yet. I'm a historian. I don't think YouTube really cares for me talking about the truth. All right. No, I don't want to do that. Yeah, you guys like, come on, what are you doing, Redoubt? Share screen. All right, so last year, the second installment of Uncut History, I gave you the entire history of probably the most famous television segment relating to Thanksgiving, and as the WKRP in Cincinnati Turkey Drop. Very quickly, for those that don't know, WKRP in Cincinnati was a sitcom that aired in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and is about a radio station in Cincinnati that has a rapid format change. The radio station was starting to go out of business, so they brought in some young blood, and by young blood, rock and roll blood, and the older management have to contend with the younger employees they brought in with. The first couple episodes were not really popular, but then episode 7 aired, the Thanksgiving special, and it is the most famous episode of the show and allowed the show to be able to air, I think, for like 5 more seasons. So, without any further ado, this the Thanksgiving, I don't know if today's the official date this aired, but in 1978 is when this episode dropped. So that means this segment is now 45 years old. Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to stop delaying. I'm going to get everything. Oh, what am I doing? I know. Next week, that's the podcast. That's not the Readout Productions. That's the podcast. Those are very different things. Share tab instead. Oh, okay. There we are. Here we are.
All right, fellow babies, and now it's time to go to our live remote man on the scene at the Pinedale Shopping Mall for the big WKRP turkey giveaway. So take it away, Les Nessman.
This is Les Nessman, your man on the scene here at the Pinedale Shopping Center, where the excitement is mounting. We're here to witness the big WKRP Turkey Thanksgiving giveaway.
Hey, you got permission to be out here? What? You're blocking my store here, buddy.
Don't you know who I am?
Huh?
I'm Les Nessman. I won the Buckeye News Hawk Award last year.
Good for you, Buckeye. Now get out of my doorway.
I'm sorry. Creep.
Oh, Les's character, he's sometimes spaced out. He's so serious about his work and about reporting the Monday news. All right, I'm trying to do breaks just so I don't actually get
So far, so good, huh?
I'm here with hundreds of people who have gathered to witness what has been described as perhaps the greatest turkey event in Thanksgiving Day history. All we know for sure is that in a very few moments, there are going to be a lot of happy people out here.
Oh, yes, very happy,
Now,
Les, very happy.
The crowd is curious, but well behaved.
They're like, holy crap, what is going on here? Wait, it's bad when it's cringeworthy when the local radio network is sent down a report and nobody else is
And
there.
I think I hear something now. The crowd is moving out into the parking area. And, oh yes, I can see it now. It's a helicopter. And it's coming this way.
A helicopter.
It's flying something behind it. I can't quite make it out. It's a large banner. And it says,
When I hear the helicopter coming, it never fails when you hear the helicopter coming. Everybody just stops what they're doing and they look up in the air. Like all the time today. It's like, you guys never heard a helicopter before?
Happy Thanksgiving from W K R P. What a sight, ladies and gentlemen, what a sight. The copter seems to be circling the parking area now. I guess it's looking for a place to land. No, something just came out of the back of the helicopter. It's a dark object. Perhaps a skydiver plummeting to the earth from only 2,000 feet in the air.
Oh, God.
Second to the third. There's no parachutes yet.
This makes me think, I was reading apparently during the Battle of Lookout Mountain, a Confederate soldier decided to be a smart idea to evade capture to jump off one of the cliffs, and the diarist writes so nonchalantly, "Yeah, he jumped 200 feet. He ain't coming back, guys."
Can't be skydivers. I can't tell just yet what they are, but oh my God, they're turkeys! Oh, Johnny, can you get this? Oh, they're crashing to the earth right in front of our eyes. One just went to the windshield of a parked car.
Eating turkeys out the helicopter.
Others running around pushing each other. Oh my goodness! Oh, the humanity! Oh, people are running about. The turkeys are hitting the ground like sacks of wet cement. I don't know how much longer the crowd is running for their lives.
You know, there have been some pretty stupid promotions done over the years. And apparently there is some truth to this story that this is inspired by multiple reports that local radio stations were handing out live turkeys. Now there's dispute over, was the turkey actually thrown out of a helicopter or was it just a guy handing them out of a truck? Regardless of the case, it didn't end too well. Funny thing, turkeys, when they're being held and they know they're about to be slaughtered, they fight for their lives. They're vicious.
I think I'm going to step inside. I can't stay out here and watch this any longer. No, I can't go in there. Children are searching for their mothers, and not since the Hindenburg tragedy has there been anything like this. I don't know how much longer I can hold my position here, Johnny. The crowd.
That's it. It's gone. We lost him.
Les, are you there?
Eaten by the mob.
Les isn't there. Thanks for that on-the-spot report, Les. For those of you who just tuned in, the Pinedale Shopping Mall has just been bombed with live turkey. Film at 11.
Hey, you know, I'd have expect something like this to happen in real life.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Not when you throw them out of a gosh darn helicopter. Not when you do that. So yeah, I have to play that. It's annual tradition. It's annual tradition for Readout Productions. We must commemorate the first and only WKRP turkey drop. All right. Shill. What am I? You're shilling the podcast. It's right. I guess I probably should shill the podcast. So that's going to do it here tonight. That's it. That's all I got. This is the Turkey Day stream. This was we're talking about the battles for Chattanooga. We ate our turkey before we came on stream. And then we watched Grant whip Bragg's butt for bragging too much. And then we got to watch turkeys get thrown out of a helicopter, or well, at least listen to it. So if you enjoyed this stream, be sure to hit the like button down below to let the algorithm know that history content is both fun, entertaining. That's the same thing. Both fun and important on the YouTube as well as the Rumble, because we are dual streaming on Rumble right now. So be sure to hit the like button down below if you are watching on Rumble and liked it over on Rumble. If you want to tell friends and family about this very peculiar campaign of the American Civil War, consider sharing this stream, sharing the recap. And if you want to be the first notified when I go live and be the first notified when a new episode of Retracing History drops, subscribe to the channel, be it on YouTube or on Readout Productions. The Turkey Day extravaganza, or the Turkey Week extravaganza, will resume tomorrow at 12 p.m. on the Heterochrome Media podcast. That is my sister channel. A link can be found in the link tree in the description below. So go to Linktree, you'll see the Heterochrome Media podcast, and then you can check in there. 12 p.m. tomorrow, where me and my co-host will start a dramatic reading of the John Brown Isekai, the official one. We did a novella version on Readout Productions, but now we're doing the full shebang. It's gonna be an interesting stream, to say the least. And then, it's not a stream; it's a video. The brain's starting to rot. I can sense it. And then Sunday, the brain has really rotted. See, I was doing so well. I felt I was doing pretty good tonight. And then the brain rot set in. And then Saturday, we will wrap up the Turkey Week extravaganza with a new installment of Retracing History. So thank you guys. I am muted. I don't know why. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube and Rumble for Uncut History.